I grew up in Wellsboro, a small town in North Pennsylvania, surrounded by vast state game lands. Though I no longer live there, hunting season was a significant event, with schools even closing for the first day of rifle season as half the town ventured into the woods. My father introduced me to hunting when I was about 12, and by 23, I was a regular solo hunter. This particular incident occurred during the late archery season in November of 2021. I remember the light dusting of snow on the ground, which made tracking easier. I had permission to hunt on a large 70-acre private property belonging to an older acquaintance of my dad's. The land was mostly dense woods, with a small clearing and an old logging trail running through it. Deep within, there was also an abandoned hunting cabin, its roof beginning to collapse, that no one used anymore. I had visited this property 4 or 5 times previously and never encountered another soul. That morning, I arrived around 5:15 a.m., still under the cover of complete darkness. I parked my truck by a rusted gate, as always, and walked in with my headlamp on. The woods were eerily silent. I recall an unsettling feeling, a sense of being watched, even before reaching my stand. But I dismissed it as my usual unease from being alone in the dark. I climbed into my tree stand, about 20 feet up, and waited for dawn. Roughly an hour after sunrise, something immediately caught my attention and bothered me. About 60 yards away, I spotted another tree stand that hadn't been there before. I knew this property well, and was certain it wasn't present the previous weekend. It was a cheap ladder stand, looking old and weathered, as if it had been stored for years, yet I would have noticed it. What disturbed me more were the absence of footprints in the snow leading to it, save for a single trail, emerging from deep within the woods and stopping directly at its base. I watched it for a while, considering that perhaps someone else had permission to hunt here but had never mentioned it. Around 8 a.m., I noticed movement near that stand. Initially, thinking it was a deer, I quickly realized my mistake when I saw a person standing behind a tree. They weren't in camouflage, but wore a dirty gray hoodie and dark pants. The figure was utterly still, looking in my direction. I wasn't sure if they had seen me at first, but then they slowly raised an arm and waved. It wasn't a friendly, smiling wave, but more of a simple acknowledgement that they had seen me. I gave a small wave back, assuming they were just another hunter without proper gear. After about a minute, the person stepped behind the tree, and I expected them to reappear on the other side, but they didn't. I waited and waited, but they never emerged. I presumed they must have walked deeper into the woods, but I heard no footsteps. I climbed down to stretch my legs and perhaps do a little still hunting. I walked towards where I had seen the person. When I reached the tree they had been standing behind, I saw that the snow around it was completely undisturbed, save for my own tracks walking in. There were no tracks leading away, only the same single line of footprints I'd noticed earlier, leading towards the ladder stand. I followed those prints, and they stopped right at the stand's base. I looked up, expecting to see someone in it, but it was empty. The seat had a thin, undisturbed layer of snow on it. This made absolutely no sense. I felt my chest tighten, a sense of deep unease washing over me. I decided to head back toward my own stand. On the way, I noticed something tied to a branch at eye level, a strip of orange hunting vest material tied in a knot. I initially thought someone might be marking a trail, but then I saw another about 15 feet away, and then another. They were tied at different heights, as if marking something very specific. That was the first moment I seriously considered leaving. Around noon, I returned to my truck to eat and warm up. Nothing happened during that time, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched from the tree line. I almost left, but I convinced myself I was just overthinking things. I went back in around 2 p.m. to sit until dark. This is when things took a turn for the worse. About an hour before sunset, I heard what sounded like slow footsteps in the fallen leaves behind me. They were too heavy and widely spaced to be an animal. I turned to face them, expecting to see another hunter. About 30 yards behind my stand, I saw the same person from earlier. This time, they were closer, and I could see their face more clearly. Their beard was patchy and dirty, and their skin was pale, as if they hadn't seen daylight in weeks. What truly disturbed me was their smile. Not a normal smile, but a subtle baring of teeth. They were holding something in their right hand, which I initially thought was a stick until I saw the small yellow and black handle. It was a screwdriver. They didn't speak, choosing only to stare me down with that unsettling half-smile. I asked if they had permission to be on the property, but they didn't answer. After about 10 seconds of this heart-pounding standoff, they slowly turned and walked away into the trees. That should have been the moment I left. However, I made the foolish decision to stay until shooting light ended. Right after sunset, I climbed down and started walking back quickly. In that moment, I regretted not leaving while there was still some light in the sky. About halfway to my truck, I started noticing the orange cloth strips again, but this time they weren't just on branches. Some were tied to small sticks pushed into the ground. The thing that truly terrified me was that one of the sticks had something hanging from it, a dead squirrel. It had been hung by a wire threaded through its back legs. I am a hunter, but I do not condone the needless suffering of animals. Beneath the squirrel and stick, in the snow, someone had drawn a rough circle with a boot. That was the second time I seriously considered running. As I continued walking, I started noticing more of these disturbing markers. Not just squirrels, but a rabbit, a crow, all hung in the same way, like morbid markers or perhaps a threat. I began to walk faster. About 100 yards from my truck, I saw something leaning against a tree that made me stop completely. It was my backpack, the one I had left in my tree stand earlier that day. I had never brought it back down with me. It was zipped open, and my belongings, my knife, flashlight, and extra arrows were laid out neatly in the snow, as if someone had taken inventory. That was the moment of chilling realization. Someone had been close enough to my stand to climb it without my knowledge. I grabbed my things quickly and jogged the rest of the way. When I reached the clearing where my truck was, I had another unexpected encounter. It felt like it just wouldn't stop. My driver's side door was open. I knew I had locked it, as I always do. Nothing inside appeared stolen, but my registration papers were sitting on the passenger seat instead of the glove box. I got in and locked the doors. As I started the truck, I looked in the mirror toward the tree line. There he was, standing just inside the woods, perhaps 40 yards away. The guy in the hoodie. From what I could tell, he was still smiling. This time, he raised his hand again, but instead of waving, he simply pointed at me. Then, slowly, he dragged his finger across his own throat. I left so fast, spinning gravel all the way back to the main road. I told the property owner what happened, and he confirmed that no one else had permission to be there. He contacted the Game Commission. About 2 weeks later, he called my dad to say that officers had found a makeshift shelter deep on the property, constructed from tarps and old wood. Inside, they discovered animal bones and stolen hunting gear from other properties. I never hunted there again. I don't hunt alone anymore, and certainly not in unfamiliar grounds. Anything can happen when you're out there, alone, yet not truly alone. In moments of fear, uncertainty, or danger, reciting Ayatul Kursi acts as a powerful shield. It reminds us that Allah is the ultimate protector over all things. Recite it after every prayer, before sleeping, and when leaving home. No harm can touch you when a law's protection surrounds you.